for coming. Very nice turnout. I was wondering if with the warm weather we would see more attrition, but I guess at least the sun is down now, so the day is closing. This is the March 9th meeting of the Town of Westwood Islington Center Task Force meeting. And I have an agenda, and I don't believe other more copies. Can you copy the agenda too? Or no?
You know, to be honest, I don't know.
Okay, well, you have to trust me that I follow the agenda. The first couple items, we're going to wait until Addie arrives. The third is the review of the draft RFP for the development of property in the center. I think you all now have a copy before you, and I'll let Laura give the remarks.
Sure. So the task force met last on February 10th. We actually didn't have a quorum that night, so it wasn't an official meeting. But in light of the fact that several members had come out to the library for a meeting, we decided to go ahead with an informal discussion, which was taped by Westcat. So if anyone's interested in seeing what that discussion was, they can go onto the westcat.tv website and see all the discussion that we had. One of the things we were talking about at that meeting was a draft RFP. Another was a potential online survey. So what each of the task force members have in front of them now is a copy of the draft RFP with some amendments based on the comments that were made at the February 10th meeting. There are a few copies in the audience, if anyone would like to grab one that doesn't have one. The purpose of this RFP is to take 4 parcels that the town owns. The parcel has the Islington Community Center, the one that has Wentworth Hall, otherwise known as the Islington Branch Library, another parcel that is currently the municipal lot, and a 4th one that is a portion of the driveway and parking lot that's behind the ICC and the branch library. The idea is to put these out in a proposal and invite developers to give suggestions for what they would like to do with 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of these parcels. Those proposals would come back to this task force for review and for consideration. There are specific threshold criteria that are set forth in the draft RFP that this task force would use to weight those proposals to decide which, if any of those, would be worth pursuing. If this task force finds any that would be worth pursuing, they can send a recommendation to the selectmen. The selectmen will also be receiving the proposals, and they will receive the task force recommendation and will consider those proposals along with the recommendation and decide if they want to select 1 or more designated developers to pursue a project. If they choose 1 or more developers, the developers would have to present detailed plans of the proposal, which would have to go for any town approvals that they need. At a minimum, they would need planning board approval, whether it's a site plan approval or a special permit approval. They could need zoning, they could need conservation commission review, there could be other approvals they need. Once they receive all those approvals, if a developer was chosen and receives all those approvals, the next step would be town meeting. Any proposal would have to be approved by town meeting before any land can be transferred or even leased on any of these properties. So this is starting the process with a draft request for proposals. Those members that were here reviewed at the meeting and discussed it and made some changes. There were some members who were unable to make that meeting and asked for copies of the draft, which I sent electronically. So if anyone's had any more thoughts on it since then, I'm happy to continue discussion on the draft RFP. No comments or questions?
Laura, has town council reviewed the definitive review of?
Not yet. So after this commission goes through it, you're the only ones who have this so
Okay.
far. So this is the first step. If you're satisfied with the RFP, then the next step it will go to town council and to the selectmen. The proposals actually, the request for proposals would actually be put out by the selectmen, so it won't go out unless they approve it. It would also be reviewed by the procurement officer, who has taken a look at the draft for format only. She hasn't reviewed the detail.
Let's see, section 5.1.1, it's actually the blue writing.
Yes.
And I believe this is also maybe back in the, it used to be 2.2 2. or
This is the threshold criteria. It's addressed in two places. The first is when we describe the parcels and what they contain. Excuse me, parcel 2 is Wentworth Hall, parcel 3 is the Islington Community Center.
So actually, I should probably address where it's originally in 2.2 for parcel 2. But it's effectively the same language. It says, said proposal must include provisions for equivalent community space, either within the project area or in an off-site location, in a manner acceptable to the board. I guess it sounds like the purposeful vague language there. That is currently home to Islington Branch. Why was it worded in such a way? Why wasn't it worded that instead of community space, why was
As opposed to saying they shall replace a new library in Islington?
Oh, library space.
Yeah, I think because the space could be more than just a library. It could be a new community center that contained a library, or it could be a standalone library. I think the decision would be made once we receive a proposal. So this is to leave it open-ended. When a proposal comes in, if it's something that's advantageous, then the committee can consider it, and the selectmen can consider it, and eventually, if it gets that far, town meeting can consider it. If it's something that doesn't make the cut, if the proposal is less than what is desired, then it would be rejected. But this allows for a more open-ended response.
And an off-site location can mean anywhere in town, is that correct?
It can mean in Islington Center on one of the parcels that are being considered, in Islington Center on a separate parcel, or elsewhere in Westwood.
Okay. And then I just have another question, and maybe this is maybe more for Mike here. I'm just trying to understand kind of a big picture. We have two community buildings here, the ICC building and Wentworth Hall, and providing community services to the town. And let's say, for all intents and purposes, something that you would assume that you would be providing to the town, those types of services for a long time, or something that you would like to provide to town. I'm just trying to understand the gist behind it of that you'd be potentially selling the buildings in which you would be providing these services. Because we're in a town where we don't have a lot of land, and we don't have a lot of spaces. Trying to imagine, okay, where else, if we sell these buildings, where else could we put these types of things? And normally, if you're kind of doing a swap with somebody, if you're trying to, you kind of know necessarily what's the other side of this swap. But we don't. In this case, we're kind of asking for them to come up with this. But I'm just trying, it's almost to me a little bit akin to, I'm looking to sell town hall, but I know I need town hall forever. So, like, the financing of it is a little odd to me, like, in the sense, I mean, it'd have to be a really good deal, because I'm gonna be paying somebody for an awful long time if I'm gonna get a lease from them, or, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, like, financially. I don't know, I mean, so.
I think quite honestly, I think the answer is that it would have to be beneficial to the town, or else we would do it. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's what everyone would be looking at, everyone at town meeting would be looking at. So we wouldn't be trying to sell it short by any means. So at least that's the way I feel. So I can't speak for the other two, but I mean, it's going to have to be best for the town, not necessarily best for the developer. So.
I think that we're looking for creative solutions, but the current senior center, when it was originally designed, was supposed to be way more than what we ended up getting. So it was
Way more
in size. It was supposed to be almost 3 times the size of what we got there. We got cut back. The original thought was to make a community center that contained a senior center within it. And the point was, at the time, we had a grant from the state for $600,000 to create a senior center, and the concept that we were proposing was to have some additional town funds added to that, so we could create a community center. That changed on town meeting floor. The article got amended. It got reduced down to just what the grant would provide, so we had to go back and redesign the facility. The point is that it could still be a community center, and it could be an option that the community center space that we have in Islington, not necessarily the library now, I'm just talking about the community center space, which is, you know, a couple of rooms. The money we got from that building could finance the creation of what originally we thought of as a community center in one building. That's a thought, that's a possibility that could come back as a proposal, but, and I'm using it as an example of, we don't know what the developer will propose to us, but that's something that they could consider. And that would be an option of relocating some of the community space that we're talking about in this RFP in another location in town. I don't think that we're talking about relocating the Islington Library in the main part of town, because that doesn't make sense.
So when we write these RFPs, we write them intentionally open-ended to not preclude ideas that we haven't considered already. And that's the purpose of the request for proposals, to get creative proposals. If it was something we've already decided should be done, we wouldn't be going through the same process. We would be going through maybe an auction process, if that was the case. So it would be helpful probably to look at some recent RFPs that we have done in a very similar fashion. One was the building right next door, the Colburn School Building. We had a request for proposals that involved taking the school building and putting it somewhere else. We suggested that one of the possibilities was right next door where the library used to be. Another possibility was taking it and moving it to a different location. It was open-ended as for what the uses would be, whether they would be commercial and residential, a mix of the two, if it was going to be office. It was just put out there as a request for proposals to see what developers thought we should do. In that case, I think we received 3 proposals. We reviewed them, they were all different, and we selected the one that was most advantageous to the town, and that's how we ended up with the bank with apartments above and the Colburn School right next to us. Another one was the Obed Baker House. That one we put out a request, also very open-ended like this, and similar to this one, allowed for options of purchase or lease. We ended up in that case with 3 proposals also, and we ended up selecting a proposal that required leasing the property to the Westcat board for a 5-year lease with an extension to, option to extend for another 5 years, in which they renovate the building and bring it back to a useful building. The town maintains ownership, and Westcat gets to use it for 5 or 10 years. That again was decided that it was advantageous. That was a case where the town retained ownership of the property, but someone else restored it and will use it. And in that case, use it for public purposes. Westcat and the Westwood Historical Society is also using the property. They're working jointly on that. And another very recent example of a request for proposals we put out involving the Girl Scout House properties. It was a little bit different because we knew what we wanted to do there, and there were a lot of negotiations ahead of time about how we would like to see that go, but we still put it out for a request for proposals to see, you know, if there was a better way of doing it. In that case, we had very specific requirements we needed. We couldn't let that proposal be open-ended because we absolutely needed to acquire a specific parcel behind Town Hall to allow for a roadway to go through. And we only had one other parcel to offer in replacement of that. So that was one where we intentionally narrowed it because the circumstances demanded that. In this case, I think we're intentionally keeping it as broad as we possibly can to invite the most competitive bids we can get.
I'm going to prove my longevity here. There's another alternative. It's even 3 days holiday. We bought the YMCA at one point had an 11-acre parcel that they were looking to create a YMCA. At the time, the people in authority didn't want that. The community didn't want that to happen. So the YMCA offered us the land for sale. We bought it for $300,000. It had some wetlands on it, but it had some developable land on it. It had a commercial strip on the front of it. It was about ½ acre of land, and we decided that that ½ acre would add to the ambiance of our commercial district, and so we put that ½ acre out of commercial land out for bid, request for proposal. We received 2 proposals, and today it's the home of the optometrist and the insurance company. I think.
Montessori schools.
Montessori, right next to the Starbucks. And that was the selected bidder on that particular project. And we sold the property for $250. We almost recovered the entire sale, the entire purchase price that we had invested in the 11 acres. And the 11 acres, I think, has since been converted to conservation.
Land. And in all these cases, before the property is transferred or sold, it goes back to town meeting for approval. So I think it's important to remember there. The first step is this board's review of proposals. The next step is the selectmen's review. Then board approvals, any approvals that are necessary, and then town meeting.
But in all those cases, an RFP went out, we got 3 or more, and there was a decision to move forward with one of them. So in none of those cases did we say, we're not happy with these, and we walked away.
Well, actually, with the Obed Baker House, we did. We put it out before, and we were not happy with the proposals, and so we withdrew. And we said it would be no.
The same thing happened with, but it wasn't
With
us.
the optometrist?
Not the optometrist, the Coburn School, the first time that had a proposal on it, we went to town meeting with it, the neighborhood felt uncomfortable about the proposal, and we went back out to the drawing board a year later. So we've had rejections in the past, or things that we didn't go forward with,
I think
for
it's
one reason or
important
another.
for everybody to know that.
Yes.
You know, in terms of, there have been situations where the community has not been happy and moved forward with something else. So I think that's an important.
Or as part of the process, and this sort of comes from my observation of the way University Station evolved. When the developers in University Station first came into the planning board, there was a lot of back and forth discussion in terms of what the town was starting to get comfortable with. And it was interesting to watch how it evolved before it was formalized. So is there part of the process here where potential bidders can come in? Can they have informal conversations with someone to say, these are our thoughts, these are our ideas? There will be some give and take during the process before they submit a formal bid, or can that be allowed or not allowed?
People can ask questions. We have what's called a requirements discussion, where all the potential bidders are welcome to come to that, and at that time, in public, they can ask whatever questions they want, so that every potential bidder is welcome to attend that and can hear the answers to the questions. We wouldn't speak individually with one party about their proposal for the RFP, not before a submittal. After a submittal comes in, then we discuss it with them in great detail. We can have them in for interviews, we can review the proposal, we can cause them to amend the proposal, we can approve something conditionally and require it to evolve in a certain manner.
Are the proposals, say you've got 3 or 4 here, are they viewed as competitive with one another, or are we totally free to choose the one we like?
So there's threshold criteria that have to be met. If any proposal meets those threshold criteria, it moves on to the review stage. There's a list of, let's see, what page it is on.
15.
Okay, 15 is the threshold criteria that just has to pass. Then if you turn to 16, there's a list of evaluation criteria. Each proposal that met the threshold criteria would be scored according to the comparative evaluation criteria. So that's when we bring in the development teams, go through their proposals very carefully and actually give monetary scores to some of these, qualitative scores to others, to determine what's best for the town. And then we come out, we review all of that and make a determination of which one is the preferred project.
What
And it
about-
may be more than one project. Remember, there are 4 parcels that are offered.
Right.
We may get a proposal for only one of those parcels, we may get a proposal for all 4. We may get 3 proposals for 2 or 3 of the lots. We just don't know.
In that process, say people meet the threshold criteria, so they're now into round 2 and they come in, and are you allowed to have discussions with the potential developer at that point in time? Let me use the example of the library and the community center. And, they had a plan A, if you modified it, it might all of a sudden really emerge as something ideal for the town. Can you make that suggestion, or can't you in this evaluation
What
process?
you could do, if that proposal is otherwise the one that you would prefer, if
Okay.
they tweak this or remove that, and if it's not monetary, if what you're talking about them changing is more the look of something, you could approve it with conditions that require them to change that way. And if a project is selected to move forward, the project evolves in the review stage, much like you mentioned University Station. University Station was brought to the town as a concept, and then the planning board worked along with the developer
That's
to
right.
design the project as they went forward. But that initial concept is what's competitive. So we would have bidders that would put forth their best concept and a monetary value, whether it's a purchase or a lease. And then we determine what's most advantageous. It may not be that the one that offers us the most money is the most advantageous for the town. So qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis, we have to balance them. And this RFP does not set a standard for how they're balanced. That comes out of the discussion.
The Coburn School is a good example of a proposal. We had two proposals for the Coburn School the last time around. And we selected the one that we liked, the one that had housing. After we selected them, in the process, they said, we'd like to put an addition on the building. They didn't originally put an addition on the building. They came to us and said, okay, you selected us, we'd like to put an addition on the back side of the building because we would like to have a little bit more room for the housing units that we're proposing to build. That went to the planning board for review. There was some consideration of the historical aspects of the building and what impact that would have on the character. They came up with a design that was very close in matching what was already there. And then it ultimately got approved, and that's what got built with the window for the bank underneath with the extension of that bank. So it's a project that evolved further after we accepted.
But we would start with the proposals that are received and rank those and determine which is the best proposal to move forward with. And as we move forward with it, it evolves. It has to get to the point where it receives all the approvals and is welcomed by town meeting. And if it fails at either of those stages, it doesn't go forward. Any other comments on task force? Do you want anything public to ask questions?
Yeah, sure. Since the group has closed most of their commentary, I'll ask the public if anyone in the public has a question or a comment. You can stand, introduce yourself, and mention your address, please.
Mike Gallagher, 25 Ash Street. Just on the proposal we're talking about on the library property. It talks about the parking, it doesn't mention anything about ball field parking. And that lot is full during the ball season. Because there's not enough parking at the ball field itself. So if there's a big development going in there, that parking has to be replaced. That's all.
That parking, Roach Brothers parking throughout downtown, it's not owned by the town, is used by players going to the ball field.
I understand
That happens. So, yeah, I think that's recognized, and I think everyone is aware that there are definite parking issues at times in Islington. And any new proposal would have to take that into consideration. So there is a criteria for traffic, for vehicular and pedestrian traffic, and for parking. That would be.
Nora, so that Wentworth property is only where the building is, it doesn't include the parking behind it?
Actually, the Wentworth property includes the parking, the Islington Community Center property does not.
Okay, so there's a property line in between somewhere
There
in
is.
that parking area?
The parcel marking around the Islington Community Center is essentially the building. It's just feet outside of the building, and everything else is the library until you get to the CVS line. So there's a line, if you drew straight down from Washington, along the edge of the CVS building, back to the houses behind.
Technically, could someone just want the ICC building? Or-
They
or
could.
But can you buy a building with no parking at all, or could you do that?
You could, you'd have to make provisions for parking elsewhere. So if you had other land that you wanted to put parking on and you wanted that building, or if you wanted to take that building, demolish the building, put a smaller building there and accommodate parking next to it, that's something we would
Yeah.
consider.
Or under.
Or under, right. So we consider it, and if it makes sense, if we feel it adds to the town center and matches the character that we want to see in the town center, and if it can obtain the planning board approvals it would need to do that, then it can be considered and can be sent to town meeting for final approval.
There's another zone. My name's Kevin Bean, Everett Street. I just want a point of information, just a clarification on parcel number 1. Does that include the historic, no, not historic, but that like historic looking clock? And additionally, has there been any consultation in regards to the 34E bus line? Is there any way that we consult the MBTA or anything in that regard?
So, with regard to your first question, the clock is furnishing, and it's owned by the town, and it's currently on town property. We could keep it there, or we could, if we sold the lot, we could move it into the public right of way. As far as the bus line, the bus stop is on the public way, on the right of way, and would not be expected to change. If there was some reason, if there was a proposal that made sense to move that further up or further back, then we would discuss it with the MBTA, but I don't think we'd be ready for a discussion of that kind just on the initial proposals from this. I think that's something that could develop down the line.
Any takers? Okay, well,
The bridge reconstruction project, Islington Bridge reconstruction project, MBTA is undergoing. Is it, is it planned out yet? Do we know enough about it that it could in any way affect this?
We've seen the initial design, which is it 25% yet, Mike? I don't think so. 15%. We've seen the 15% design. They're proceeding with that. They expect the design period to take for another year. I think the design will be at 100% next summer, and then they will begin the bidding and construction. So what they're proposing right now is replacing that bridge with a two-piece structure, one piece for each track in either direction. And it would be a wider bridge, and it would be a taller bridge. I believe the height limit is 13.5 feet as it's currently designed. So right now, the bridge is about 10.5 feet. Standard is 14.5 feet. They're going to propose this at 13.5 feet, which they believe is high enough to allow the trucks that are currently hitting it to get through, but not so high to allow much larger vehicles to go through. I'll also say that there's currently a restriction for overweight vehicles on East Street, and that will remain in place even after the bridge is replaced. So that won't change.
Is it the two sidewalks, both sides?
Sidewalks on both sides, yes. Sidewalks and a bicycle lane on both sides. So a much wider path under the bridge. So the path under the bridge would be at least equivalent to the path in front of the ball field. Yeah, so if you see how the roadway is fairly wide and there's room to ride a bicycle on the side, and there's a sidewalk on one side of that, picture that going under the bridge at that same width, and then widening to a sidewalk on the other side as well. And that sidewalk on the south side would then be continued up to the street where it would you cross over and then meet with the existing sidewalk on that side of the street. So those designs are progressing. We'll see more of them, I think, when it reaches 25%.
I
They
think
have a
they're, I
hearing.
think they're obligated to have a public hearing at 25%.
So getting up to that, like, how are the butters property affected? Is there the possibility that this property is going to be purchased by the town?
My understanding is that there are no takings. No, so the sidewalk will be in right of way. Now, the sidewalk will be in areas that are currently grass, but that's not private property. So if you look on the south side of the street, as you come under the bridge abutments narrow the width of the roadway substantially. So the roadway is out here, it narrows at the bridge, and then it widens again. And where it widens, as you are going up East Street, there is grass there. There's not a sidewalk, but that is town right of way. So the sidewalk would be within that grass area.
Could it be then that the bridge reconstruction project and this redevelopment project would go on at the same time?
It's a possibility. I don't think we know yet. private development will move ahead at private development's schedule, and the state project will move ahead at the state project schedule. So much like we had at University Station.
I can show your
We
laughter.
We had a mix of private and public development there, and they proceeded at the same time.
And we're still waiting for the railroad to do their work.
Yes, it was still, yeah, that's true. So the private often moves faster than the public.
But that's the CSX railroad project, this is different. The MBTA is also very, very concerned, or not concerned, but they're gonna make provisions. That's an active line, and so they're gonna do their construction in such a way to make sure that the line can stay open.
Right, and they're cognizant of the fact that that's a very important corridor going through there, and that you can't get across Westwood without going significantly out of the way. You'd have to go to Dedham or Norwood if you can't go through there. So they know that, and they are designing the project and the construction schedule to limit the disturbance.
We're gonna try and keep traffic under the bridge in both directions open as much as possible. So, you know, they're really being very thoughtful about how they're gonna do this.
And at the beginning of that project, there were some discussions that there could potentially be challenges associated with raising that bridge and maintaining the stop at Islington. Have you been able to figure that out?
Yes.
That's one of the reasons they're limiting the height to 13.5 feet, because by only going, they're not even going up 3 feet, they're going up 2 feet, I think, and they're going down a foot. And what that does is it allows them to stabilize the slope of the track so they don't interfere with the station, so they don't have to build up the platform and also to the station.
And the other piece of that is that's why they're doing 2 tracks, because if they did one, it would have to be much thicker, and by 2 separate tracks, it now can be much thinner, so we can get to 13.6.
So it's a very thoughtful design process, and it will be public as soon as it reaches 25%. Thank you.
I just wanted to add something about the parking. I mean, location-wise, Westwood is pretty much a transit, or let's say Islington Center is kind of a transit center when it comes to level, when it comes to street roads. So if we compare Dedham Square and Norwood Square and Norwood Center, pretty much both these 2 centers do have parallel parking. Somehow, this is what has been missing in Islington Center. If you go back 10 or 15 years ago, Islington Center used to have parallel parking. If you compare the positive sides of parallel parking in Islington Center versus the negative side, first of all, the state decided to have the 2 lanes on both sides of 4 lanes in order to use the center, that center of Westwood as a connection, as a bridge between Dedham Square and Norwood Center. Not necessarily thinking that Islington Center is going to be, it's a vivid, viable business center. But the more we add up more function, we have to think more, very similar as the Dedham Square, as Norwood Center. Personally, I do see lots of positive things on the, if we had to introduce parallel parking, such as less pollution, less, the noise, the level of noise is much slower, much less. At the same time, the center is going to be more vivid than it is now. We think that by using 4 lanes is going to make our lives better, but to see it on a different kind of way and to compare our town or our center very similar as less cars, less traffic, not anymore as a bridge with 2 lanes on each side, but literally as the cars to make the car stop by providing parallel parking. I would personally, ask the planning board to consider that, or even in the state level to consider that. And I'm not sure if there are like any pictures from how Westwood used to be 20 years ago, like how many cars used to stop there. So it really brings a different concept. You know, Norwood Center has a different, much denser population than we do, And still, they do maintain the parallel parking. It's a key factor in order to really boost the business development in that particular center.
We actually, I think, Paul, you have a lot of photographs, right?
Couple,
We used to have diagonal parking on the street, in front of,
We're not going back
No, we're not
there.
going
in front, no,
back.
in front of
I
Wild
cannot
Blossom,
imagine that,
Yes.
parallel.
That's
and in front of CVS.
So they got rid of the diagonal parking, put in the parallel
It
parking
gets
that
more
exists
width.
there now.
The diagonal gets much more width, so
Right.
it cannot be feasible, but definitely I kind of envision the parallel parking.
There is
At least
parallel,
on one side.
well, there is parallel parking,
In front of CVS.
In front of CVS and-
But
Post
it's there, but
Post
it's not
office.
continuous.
Right.
It's not continuous. Especially the block in front of the Roche Brothers is very, very important to kind of have that continuity for parallel parking. Because it's easy for people to really use it, especially if they want to use more local businesses.
It was, the traffic counts in that section of Islington is significant. I want to remember 25,000 cars a day go through that, from Everett Street to East Street. And that's why you need capacity. We have to handle a lot of local traffic.
Right.
I don't know that there ever was parallel parking
not down there, no.
down by Roche Brothers.
No, there was just, there was the angle parking in front of Islington Pizza.
Right.
And in front of the,
In front of CVS.
And I
And not only in front of Islington Pizza, across the street in front of the building that Cafe Diva was in, I think, at angle parking. They did.
it might have been parallel there.
Might have been.
It was parallel, but municipal lot, I think it was parallel there and angle on the other side of CVS.
Is it just Everett to east and then it kind of drops off? It
Yes,
doesn't go up?
they drop, yeah, they're coming down Everett, and then they go up East Street, and so they don't keep going on Washington Street. That's.
So it's a combination of they come up from Norwood and come down Clapboard Tree, both those places
Right,
all
right,
follow?
come through that section of town, yeah, and then go off to the
And I
highway.
think that's more traffic than what would go down 135 between, like going through Needham Center, going between, you know, like that's kind of a, I was thinking of a bridge, like she was saying, between Needham or Denham and Wellesley, you know, kind of Needham being the bridge. Do you think that's like getting out to 128? I was wondering if that's more volume, do you think? Because they have the parallel
I don't know,
parking.
you have to compare it at the same times
Yeah.
of day. My experience in Islington has been that the traffic is heavier, but
Yeah.
it may be the times of day that I'm in Needham that they're not comparable.
All right, we don't have, do we have any more direct comments on the RFP? We're getting a little all over the place, so we just want to stuff to talk about, so.
One question on zoning or whether it would be by special permit needed, what kind of ideas or thoughts do you have about?
So that would depend on what the use is. If it's a straight commercial or office use, it can be done by site plan review. If it's a use that involves housing, it would have to be a special permit. With the residential units there. But if you wanted to do something that's allowed in the local business district, which would just be office and commercial, you could do it with just a site plan review.
This is kind of an overlay district.
It's the FMUOD overlay district. So it does allow a mixed use with housing if you go for a special permit. So that's what the developer who's looking at the property on the post office, Wild Blossom through Kevin Gill's law office, they're applying for, they have applied for, they have a hearing open for an FMUOD, flexible multiple use overlay district, special permit for a mixed use development that includes retail or office and residential.
So those of you who follow the play-by-play, even once the developer is involved in this site plan, there's many months of scrutiny and revision and long meetings and et cetera to, invest in the project. So this is probably, the RFP usually just the tip of the iceberg in terms of how much participation the community will have in the process. And I think, Nora's initial remarks are really important. It's like this is an ideas summit or ideas invitation to get some thoughts out and see what's viable from an economic and development standpoint. So.
One more question. On the comparative evaluation criteria, do any of the criteria have more weight than another?
That Right, after we put out the request for proposals, and before we consider a proposal, we will develop a scoring chart. And the commission, the task force will weight the areas accordingly. So there will be number values that will be applied. For instance, parking, either it provides sufficient parking or it doesn't. That might be 10 points if it does and no points if it doesn't. Something like meets affordable housing goals. That might be a range of it does to a high extent, it does to a moderate extent, it does to a low extent. So we'll put together a list of criteria. The board will review that before they see any proposals, so that the weighting can't be skewed based on proposals. So before the proposals come in, I will come back to this commission, this task force, with suggested weighting criteria, and we can review that. And then the selectmen will make their decision as well, and they are free to make their selection criteria how they see fit.
So the proposers will not know what the percentages are of these, what the weighted averages are of these?
No, they know that they're all important.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we would weight the average of one thing over another. We would give
It's just a question, Nora.
yeah,
It's not a-
different ways of scaling. And that would be information that they're free to have. So I guess we will put together that list before the bids come in, not just before you receive them. So after the requirement discussion, we can make that available to them. But it won't say that something is weighted more highly than something else. It'll just say that this is how we score the different criteria. And then in the end, the committee decides something may score high in one area and low in another, and you decide what's more important. I think that's got to be a subjective decision.
Any idea, Nora, how long it takes or how much money it takes for a developer to pull together a proposal in response to this RFP?
Because it's only a concept plan that they have to push forward,
Yeah.
I don't think it would be significant. So I would imagine time, probably 3 or 4 weeks would be sufficient to take a look. We will put out the RFP, and then we will give a couple of weeks and then have a site visit, a walkthrough and a requirements discussion for all interested parties to come, walk through, look, take their measurements, get whatever information they need, come to town hall, get the tax cards, see what else they need, get copies of our bylaws to see what's permitted, what's not. But then for actually developing the proposal from that point on, they need to meet with an architect, they need to meet with an engineer, but they don't need to engineer a project. They just need to figure what would work and what wouldn't. So in the case, referencing back again to the current FMUOD project that the board's reviewing, we had that developer purchase the properties probably a full year before he submitted any proposal. But when he finally did submit a proposal, it was very consistent with the sketch he showed us before he even acquired the properties. So it's that first initial sketch and an idea of what you have in mind that would be for this proposal. It wouldn't be detailed elevation drawings or engineering of the building. That would not be part of this.
Any comment from the public?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the town has a limit as to how many apartments they will allow in that Islington area. I think the residents in the area are just like starting to wrap their head around how many are already going in. So when we hear that more land is being sold, I think the concern is that any developer who's going to buy the land is going to want to put apartments in as well. I'm just wondering if the town is going to limit how many apartments will be able to go in that entire area before they feel that it's too many, kind of agreeing with everyone who lives in the area.
So right now, an FMUOD special permit allows the board to decide how many apartments are appropriate in a specific application. And they can be up to 1/2 of the square footage of property that's shown. So if you were doing a mixed-use building, a single mixed-use building, you could have 1 floor commercial and 1 floor residential. If you were doing several buildings, you could have a single building commercial, another building residential. It's very much up to the applicant to put something forward and for the planning board to look at it and see if it makes sense. And they take into consideration when they're making the decision, what else is around there, what is the market for residential or for commercial, and what is appropriate to the area. At some point, if the board determines that they have enough residential in any one FMUOD area, they can propose an amendment to the zoning bylaw to change that bylaw to either eliminate or reduce the percentage of residential. But according to the existing bylaw, any property in FMUOD 6, which is Washington Street, or FMUOD 7, which is High Street, any property can come to the board and request a special permit, and the board can consider whether to allow housing on any property. So it's not just the town-owned properties. If Roach Brothers wanted to redevelop their site for mixed-use development, they could apply to the planning board. The planning board would consider that project. They may approve it, they may deny it, they may approve it with conditions. But if at some point it's determined by the town, and when I say the planning board could propose that amendment, anyone could propose that amendment. Amendments have to go before the planning board for recommendation to the town meeting, but anyone could propose an amendment. So if people feel that there's too much residential in any one area, they can propose an amendment to the bylaw.
Mary Layton, I live on School Street. Is there a limit on stories, like 2-story, 3-story?
It's
in
limited
that
by
area?
height, not by story.
Okay,
So the bylaw, and I don't have it in front of me, but I believe the bylaw
36 feet.
height limit, 36?
36 feet, I think.
and that would be how many stories?
Usually that's 3 stories.
It could be pretty dense.
Yeah.
If
Could
they
be
put
2,
a number
could
of
be
things
3.
on 3 stories, it'd be very dense.
In the case of the fire station, that 36 feet will be a 2-story building, so it depends on the type of construction.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe there's one more comment.
Yeah, Mike Gallagher, 25 Ash Street. Is there any way to, if these properties go up for sale, keep them as separate properties and not let one single developer combine these properties so he gets a bigger building put into place?
Well, if there are proposals for individual properties, as opposed to a proposal for the whole property, they will be weighed in the same bucket with all of them. And the task force and eventually the selectmen, and then eventually town meeting can decide if that's appropriate. If they would prefer to have individual property owners, and there are 4 applications, or maybe there are 2 applications for properties that make sense and that are beneficial to the town, then this board could consider it, could recommend approval by the selectmen. Selectmen could decide that those are both designated developers, and they can put them forward to town meeting. So it remains to be seen. It's definitely a possibility that there could be 4 separate owners. 4 is unlikely, 3 is possible. I don't think that the 4th parcel, which is just the driveway and parking lot entrance behind CVS, I don't think that parcel would stand on its own. So I think that would only go along with the ICC or the women.
I have a question, it's not on the RFP, it's sort of an extension. I'm just wondering, is it, given some of the questions that have been asked here, if you were to look at Islington, I see this as one component, but is there a concept of what I'll call sort of like a master plan or master thought on what we as a committee or involved with the citizens think Islington should look like or functionally be? It's like, I think what I'm hearing here is, and I've heard it a couple of times, is, you know, if you look at all of the property that could be purchased in Islington on that street, you could propose a lot of development. And I'm just wondering, do you wait for that to happen, and at some point in time, you think the density is too great, you say time out, or do you get proactive and say ahead of time, look, given what's going on, this is what the town would like to see. And I'm just making this up as I go on. We would consider 30% residential. We'd like to see 30%, boutique type shops. We'd like to see 30% community oriented. So that, otherwise I almost get the feeling that we're going to be very reactive to what was done. This is dealing with one small segment. But I never thought about it. Suppose Roach Brothers decided one day that Wegmans is giving them too much money for their money. No, serious, and they decide that it's not profitable, and even though they're very competitive everywhere else, they're going to develop that site. And I'm just wondering, do we wait for that? Is this an opportunity we should start thinking about and putting some standards out, or some thoughts out of what we want Islington to look like 25 years from
And
now?
that's exactly the purpose for this task force.
Okay.
That's why this task force was formed, to create that plan. So at the same time we have this task force, we have been working on updating our comprehensive plan.
Okay.
The comprehensive plan has a town centers section that talks about Washington Street and High Street, but it doesn't get into the level of detail we would like to see for Islington Center.
And
So this task force is assigned the task of coming up with that plan and what they'd like to see.
And I think if we get that information out to some of the folks, the residents who live there, I think that's something, what I'm hearing people want to be involved with, they want to understand, they want to get their inputs into it. I think that would be fairly important for us to hear,
Right.
especially with those of us who don't live in that part of town. What is it, if you live there, and what is it that attracts you there? And what is it you want to see that turn into? And so I like the idea of the master plan. And then I think people will start to get a little bit more comfortable. If I were living there and I saw a wonderful apartment idea come in, almost something as creative as what happened at the Colbert School, and I said to myself, yeah, but that means that's getting, halfway up the pipeline. It can't be much more than this. I might be much more comfortable evaluating it versus if I think, oh my gosh, this is the first of 25 developments.
Right. And that's why it's before you, and that's why
Okay.
we have created a task force. So we could write that plan ourselves,
Okay.
in-house, but it wouldn't have the same community input. So we decided to create the task
I think
force to develop that plan and make all the task force meetings, evening meetings, open to the public, so that we could get everyone's input, thorough discussion, and weigh all issues.
Is there some way, do you think, maybe I'll almost ask the folks in the audience, is the community aware of what the role of the task force is, do you think or not think?
No,
They
they
are.
don't even know there is a task force.
Most
They
people
don't even know there is a task force.
How do we get, I mean, this is a frustration, by the way, we deal with on the Finance and Warrant Commission, that we think,
Shocking.
we're evaluating stuff all the time, we invite the public, and it doesn't happen unless there's a lightning rod issue. In this case, we're dealing with a particular part of town, and I wonder, how can we get that message out there so that people are aware of it?
We suffer from the lack of the daily newspaper. We have contacted the 2 weekly newspapers and given them information. We have encouraged residents to sign on to the town's listserv. We will not just hear about task force meetings, but we'll hear about all meetings, selectmen meetings, planning board meetings, finance committee meetings, school committee meetings, every meeting that happens in town, will be notified if you get onto the listserv. So we encourage that. We encourage people to look at the town's website and download information that comes off of that. We have a community newsletter that goes out 4 times a year, and we try to put information in that that's relevant to residents. And we will have articles about this task force as the task force progresses. This is not a once and done. I expect this task force to be in place for 2 or 3 years. This is not a quick solution. I think we'll be planning for quite a while. So we have a project before us. We have an RFP to discuss right now, but there's a lot more to be done, including the East Street Bridge, where we expect the design to take, most of the next year. And we expect you to weigh in on that as well.
I was thinking about that, same idea, George, and I, like last week sometime, and I was like, it's somewhat like notifying the butters. Like, couldn't we notify everyone who has an Islington address by a letter? I mean, I know it's a cost, but, I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, we're redeveloping the entire precinct, or not the entire precinct, but the whole major area. And, I mean, I think, if we send a letter to your house, it's your responsibility to read it. If you decide not to read it, then you don't read it. But, you can put important town information on the outside of it or something, and.
But I don't think it's just the Islington residents. I think everyone needs to
Yeah,
be
but
aware.
primarily, I mean, people, if you probably ask everyone in this room, I would likely to say the majority of them are probably from the area. And, I don't know, to me, I think that would be, a good place to start. And then all of that the things that you mentioned are great, but the rest of the town can kind of get it from there. But at least I think the people that live in the vicinity of the general area.
I think you'd find that there are people all over town that are concerned about Islington, people all over town that are concerned about High Street. We're undergoing a similar process for High Street. We're starting with Islington, and then we'll move to the High Street Business District and do a very similar process. But I think the entire community is interested in hearing about this. And we have at times sent out letters to that effect. I know before the pre-application conference for the Petruzziello project back in August, Abby sent out a letter to residents in the Islington area and had quite a response of people who came to the hearing and came to the pre-application conference and became aware of it because Abby sent out that letter. So everything leading up to it was very public, but people are busy and they're not tuning in. So they hear something.
And also, we have 3 members here that represent the neighborhood, especially Islington Center. So it's Kevin, it's Brad.
Yeah.
And so there are 3 members who have been actively involved of notifying people about being here in Cumberland, like in Cumberland.
Do you have any suggestions in terms of how we could increase the outreach? Make people aware?
I think there's certainly a core group that have been in communication with each other and are very, very active. And I think as Nora suggests, there are other competing, and people have competing times. Everybody can't come to every meeting. So they are having, there are conversations in the neighborhood that go on and so forth about what's going on. There has been some misinformation though. I know that there was a concern that tonight we were going to approve, accept RFPs on this very topic, and that they were coming in, and so that was something that I don't know how we fix that piece, but there certainly is some misinformation.
And I understand that people are busy, but I would feel really successful if we knew we had a way of at least getting the information out there. People are busy or not busy, they may come to one meeting once in a while. But I'll just give you an example. I'm astounded at how hard it is to communicate and energize residents. I'm involved in the Public Safety Task Force. If we've had one meeting, we've had 20. Public hearings, public meetings. We have one tomorrow night at the Downey School. I still have people come up to me and say, I never heard of this. And I'm saying, I don't know what else to do. I mean, it's on the website, it's in mailings, it's everywhere. And
It's
so
on Westcat.
It's on Westcat. So I'm still amazed that no matter what we do, maybe we just don't have a local newspaper. I don't know what to do.
I think that's what we suffer from, but we need to overcome it. And if we
So I'd
can
love to
get,
overcome it in this project if we
if
can.
we can
So
find a way to get all residents to sign up to the listserv, much like the school department has a great way of reaching out to everyone, because the school department has everyone's email address who's connected with the schools. So they're able to reach their entire population anytime they want. The town doesn't have that. We have email addresses of people who've chosen to sign up. So I strongly encourage everyone to send your email address into the town, sign on to the website for email communications on all town meetings. You'll always be informed. You'll be able to come to those meetings you want to come to, or to know when something's taking place, you can give us a call. Always happy to talk to anyone, answer questions, update you on anything you have an interest in.
Or do we have a website for this committee?
So we don't yet. We're changing our webpage in town. So the town is right now, we have a contractor who's working on replacing our old webpage with a new webpage. And we've been limited in what we can do for a short period of time on the old page. What's up there is current, other than the meeting dates we're able to change, but we're not able to change content right now. The new webpage is in development. As soon as it's completed, we will have an Islington Center Task Force section on it. We'll also have a pedestrian bicycle safety committee section on the webpage.
I have a suggestion that maybe you would have an info night, and you could hold it in a public venue and just say, do you know what's happening in Islington? And inform the community about it. And I think there would be a lot of people who would come to something like that. When it's a special task committee, I think probably you're not going to get the turnout that you would if you had, here's an info night about this. Find out what's going to happen to Islington, participate in it or whatever.
I think that is the task force, though. I think the task force is that information night. I think there's too much to be covered in a single night. So it's the task force, which will meet monthly or bi-monthly, depending on what your agendas look like.
I found an effective way is every person I've talked to, I've just told them to go onto Westcott.tv on the computer. And I told them to go to February 10th, minute 42. And to skip, I couldn't make a meeting, but I'd like skip through all the first part, go to minute 42, and that's where you discuss the RFP. And it was very effective. And that way they only had however many minutes till an hour 17 to listen to. And people did it because it was only that much time. And so if you tell them, just scroll down until you find March 9th and then listen to this much, like people can do that in little chunks or just email it to people. And I think if you do it and give it right to them, then they'll do it. you know, but
And I'd be happy to mail detailed, descriptions to people, we just need email addresses to do that.
Okay, I'm gonna do one more from the back, gentleman or the lady. It's in together, so. We'll try to move the agenda on, we're getting very far.
Yes, I will be very quick, I
Yep.
apologize. Laura Fitzhenry, I live at 57 Brookfield Road, and I'm actually a neighbor of Helen. I'm one of the people who sort of sounded the alarm back in August before the pre-application of like, oh my gosh, people, do you realize what's happening? I think for the residents of Islington, a lot of the issue is that it's overwhelming at the moment. There's the fire station, the East Street Bridge, Drew's Yellow Properties, the stuff that may or may not be happening with Hanlon School. There's a lot. So there's a lot for people to try to absorb and connect dots. So I think that, any extra sort of effort that you can make to get the information out there and remind people that it's not just, there's an RFP. It's, well, there's an RFP and it relates to this and this is a timeline. So that's one point I wanted to make. But I do think this is fabulous. And the other thing I wanted to build on what the gentleman with the beard, I'm sorry, I don't know his name. I love what you were saying about the community input and having sort of a master plan of what Islington could be or what you want it to be. I do get a little nervous though, the thought that there's an RFP that will be going out eventually. Sounds like before this master plan is put in place or kind of firmed up, that you're sort of soliciting proposals for something that you haven't actually decided you want yet and putting it out to developers, which may or may not be a good thing. I'm not saying it's bad, but I kind of feel like that might be putting the cart before the horse, just a little bit, and that if that could be reversed and get a better idea of what the long-range vision for Islington could be, and then start soliciting proposals that may fit better within that concept, would be my request.
I think that the RFP process, though, may only be a process to enlighten us as to what's possible. We've done a lot of, I've participated in a lot of planning, conceptual planning about what could go into different areas with planners. And the reality in the world and the reality the planners sometimes don't mesh. And I think that this process of the RFP will elicit ideas of what's real in the marketplace, what people are willing to invest in and what's profitable to a developer, that will give us ideas of, okay, how we can master plan that area to look better than it currently looks.
And
So-
that's the intent behind the timing too. It's almost like a charrette where you invite parties to just give ideas and work on them and develop them in real time. And then you look back and you say, does any of this make sense? And that's what we're doing. So this task force has already had discussions about issues and concerns. So we've talked about traffic, we've talked about pedestrian safety, we've talked briefly about street trees and locations of trees between roadway and sidewalk. We've talked about parking. We've talked about iconic nature of buildings. Those are the things that get at the elements that would go in the plan that we're putting together. Then, by putting out the RFP, we get more concrete ideas for what's possible, what's financially viable for buildings in the area. And together, all of those influence the final plan that goes into our comprehensive plan. So I don't think it's any one thing that stands alone. I think, although you're right, it is overwhelming to have so much at once, that's actually an opportunity because each of those pieces playing off each other create a dynamic that we haven't had for years. And Islington has stagnated for quite a while. So this is an opportunity with all these pieces moving at the same time. And I'd add to that Morrison Park, which was a recent change that I think has improved the area as well. So all of these pieces together, I think, are building a better, stronger Islington Center. Whether something comes out of the RFP that adds to that or not remains to be seen. If it adds to it, we'll have an opportunity to consider it and push it forward. And if it does not, we'll have an opportunity to say this is not what we're looking for. This is not appropriate to the context of what we want to see. But it gives us something to react to. And I think that's important. Part of planning really is reacting to reality.
Can I ask one question? Is the current developer interested in those properties?
I think so. So the current developer has asked about the RFP process several times, and the response is always the same, that we're working on an RFP, and it will be released to the public at the same time. So to that developer, to any other potential developer. But I do expect the current developer to send back the response.
So you saying,
Joe Layden, 136 School Street. Thank you very much for bringing forth the concept of the master plan, even though it's already in the process. And also for communicating with people in Islington, because it's really a hit or miss proposition as to what we know is going on. And I'd like to know if there is any deadline for the master plan. And one other question I have is, once a project is approved and it's 50% commercial and 50% residential, commercial is not filled, is there a possibility that they would go back and get a variance to use the rest of that building for residential?
There's not. We don't grant use variances in Westwood, so that's not an option. If there was a project that could not, that the developer could not demonstrate that he had a market for the commercial portion of it or for the residential portion of it, I don't believe it would receive planning board approval for the special permit. But once it is constructed, you cannot change a use to a use that's otherwise not allowed. The only way to do that would be to change the zoning, and that would require town meeting approval of a change to zoning. So you'd have to change from a 50% limit on residential to allowing residential of 100% of that area. That could only be done by town meeting. And I don't believe that that administration or the planning board would ever recommend that.
I mean, it's from a design and construction standpoint, it's highly unlikely that building could be constructed in that way from a practical manner also. I mean, if you imagine, if you think about the building that Petrucciello is doing now, the way they're designing it, there would be no way to put residential on the ground floor, for instance. I mean, that's a crude example, but I mean, I think that's a very valid point, but I think there's many reasons that are historical in planning that there's catches for those types of things.
And more significantly, we have a limited number of commercial properties in town, and we need to keep them commercial. So by allowing residential above commercial, we might increase the opportunity for commercial by increasing the 24-hour nature of the neighborhood, and we might encourage more commercial to come in. But we do not ever want to give up our commercial land for non-commercial uses, because the commercial uses are a significant part of our tax base. We rely on those to relieve the residential property owners of tax burden.
Okay, we're going to try to move on, but this is one of the most stimulating discussions I recall of late of these meetings. As we were waiting for Addie, we did skip over the first item, two items on the agenda. The first one was an update on the pending special permit of 3133 Washington. So maybe Addie, you want to do a brief update of where we are, and we can open it up to comments and questions.
Sure. I don't think everyone was here the last time, but the planning board met, had their last public hearing on February 23rd on this application. I think we had reviewed those plans at the last meeting. The proposal is still 12 residential units on the second and third floor of the new building with 2 tenant spaces, about 4,800 square feet on the first floor. Previous to that, or at that last meeting, the last one in February, the first time you'd seen the parking garage?
That was 2 meetings ago.
Okay. Well, there is a proposal there for the underground parking garage. And so on the February 23rd meeting, the planning board continued the hearing to their Tuesday, April 12th meeting in this room at 7:30. I don't think the plans are going to change substantially since that meeting, but the planning board did still have some outstanding items. The planning board has hired a professional consultant to review the plans, Bailey Group, and so they did have some outstanding issues, which are many were technical issues when reviewing the engineering plans compared to the architectural plans, making sure the pedestrian and traffic circulation patterns all match up throughout the site. The planning board had asked for more on the parking details, more analysis on how they're going to be managing that parking. The 23 spaces in the underground garage are for the tenants, but I believe they had asked for more on how exactly that's going to work, because some of them were the stacked parking spaces, so they'd be for tenants of the businesses and the residential uses. One thing they're still looking at that this group had brought up the last time was some sort of pedestrian signal for when garage vehicles are exiting the garage. So they still have to get that information to us to try to look at how that will be. They're looking at some other options of signals and some, a landing area before the cars cross the sidewalk. Signage. They want to look at the signage, at least the locations and placement of the signage. They're working on a final landscape plan. They have moved all the landscaping that was previously it was proposed behind the property on the Beacon Street property, but now it's been pulled onto their property. But our consultants still want to see more detailed landscape plan. There's some landscaping and some street furniture added in the front of the new building at the corner. The existing building at the corner, 315 in front of Wild Blossom. So some more details on the outdoor seating area and the benches there.
A couple of details. Since last meeting, we had asked the developer and their cohorts to meet with folks from the planning board and from the planning office to discuss in more detail just so the next steps and how to sort of ease some of the concerns. A major concern, which we discussed last week with them directly, was parking and to make a better case for why they may be providing what is perceived as a lower limit of parking. If somebody who attended last meeting may remember, there is actually no parking requirement. It's the purview of the planning board to decide if what they're providing is adequate. So we're feeling pretty confident they're going to come back with concrete ideas about how it's being managed and how it's being addressed. The other item, which is more of an architectural item, which they're going to meet again with us, in a smaller forum at the end of this week, is just further architectural development of the Islington Pizza Building, which until now has been a little conceptual in terms of what it's going to look like. So that's going to come forth hopefully this week and then at the next meeting. And I don't know what the approval timeline is at this point. Is there a date by which it needs to be voted upon, or is that?
Yes, the decision, the zoning sets a strict timeline. It's 180 days since the first public hearing in December, so you really have 2 meetings in April, so you have to be at your second meeting in April 25th would be the deadline. Because, the expiration date of when you have to make a decision, plus you have to change board members in there.
So just for anyone who's not aware of that, a special permit requires 4 votes in favor to approve or 4 votes to deny, but if it's not approved, it's essentially denied. The planning board is a 5-member board. 2 members, their terms expire and they're not running for re-election. So there are 3 candidates that are running in a contested election to replace those 2 candidates. There'll be 2 open spaces. In order to grant a special permit, a board member has to have heard the application from beginning to end. So after town meeting, we will only have 3 members on the planning board who could vote on the application.
Who's going to
Oh, we did? Oh, okay, change of plan. So, but still the same thing. So we would still.
Exactly, we want to make sure that Bruce is.
Sorry, so there are now 3 people running for 2 positions. My point is that you can't assume that you'll have any more than the 3 members whose terms have not expired. So there are only 3 members that are guaranteed to be eligible to vote on a special permit project. So for this project or for any other special permit projects that are currently before the board, in actuality, they need to make a decision before May 2nd or risk not being able to make a decision.
I have a question. On the commercial in this process, does the developer tell you, I'm putting a restaurant in, I'm putting a barber shop in, I'm putting a hand board, is it, when is that?
Much like University Station, they tell you what they know. So if they have a signed lease for someone that they'd like to put in, they tell you. When University Station was first proposed, they knew Target, they knew Wegmans. Those were the signed leases. Everything else was up for grabs. They had ideas of who they might have, but the leases weren't signed. The project is approved for business uses, retail, restaurant, office uses, and then we'll see what comes in. So much like the existing building that's there, there's a vacancy in the existing building where a hair salon used to be. There's no limit on what they can put there, as long as what they put there can conform with the existing parking that's available. So that'll be the same thing with this. If the developer knows who he's leasing the space to before a decision is requested of the planning board, he'll let them know. If he doesn't know, then that's open-ended.
Are there certain things that can't go in there?
There are. So a special use, an FMURD special use, has a section in the bylaw that has very specific uses that are permitted. And if it's not one of those permitted uses, it cannot go in there. So restaurant, retail, and office are all permitted
Okay,
uses.
so what you're saying is you may not know whether it's a restaurant or office, but it's not gonna be something that,
It's on to be a gas station.
or dry cleaner or something.
So I have to look, I don't know if dry cleaning,
Well, I'm just saying-
service businesses probably are allowed, so yes, that probably could be a business that's allowed. Car sales showroom would not be allowed. A self-storage facility would not be allowed. There are specific uses that are prohibited in FMUOD districts. But all general business uses that are allowed on High Street or Washington Street would be allowed there.
This is a topic that comes up continuing in our meetings with this developer, and I think, just generally speaking, I mean, for a project such as this, the developer such as Petruzio doesn't really have the luxury, let's say, of sort of curating his tenancies, let's call it. A developer like the guys who developed Legacy Place, that is a major development, which is highly lucrative for the tenants who are gonna come in there. And they likely had the ability to curate and pick and choose who they brought in, because there was probably such a resounding response. For such a small project, it's extraordinarily difficult for these guys to tell us who they get. They kind of have to wait for the phone to ring. And they do marketing, they do steps to try to drum up business, but they're businessmen. They're waiting for the response from potential tenants. And that's a reality of development, I mean, frankly, is there's no other way to really describe it.
And it's
That's
rare to
something-
have leases signed before you have approval to build a building.
Right. I mean,
It happens, but it doesn't happen often.
Right. I mean, a place like University Station, I mean, I'm sure Wegmans was, they were probably in talks with Wegmans well in advance of the building being built, because that's an anchor tenant, it's something that's very lucrative for them, obviously. And if you go there on Saturday morning, you'll see just why, like, Wegmans might have been interested in being there. So that's unfortunately it's part of the process, and it's not something we can really control, or really that he can control, unfortunately.
And even if we did, if the planning board knew what the uses were, there's nothing to keep those uses there. So a private property owner is welcome to change their businesses. Right across the street here, we have Bellows went out, the toast office is coming in. You know, that's just how businesses work. It was a convenience store, now it's Arch Orthodontics. So for better or worse, whether you prefer the old tenant or the new tenant, the property owner gets to decide who they lease to, as long as it's conforming to zoning.
Nora, can you help me understand what the benefits from a community development standpoint are of office space?
Office space and retail space.
Well, because I see those as being very different from a community perspective. I
They
think
are different. So
the community
retail,
loves retail space, office
Right.
space is kind of lame, to be honest with you.
so if you look out the doors here, what we have a lot of retail, real estate offices. We have a lot of banks, which is kind of a mix of office, retail. We have some restaurants. We have a couple of small stores, but not very many. We don't have a lot of retail.
Right.
So where everyone says they would like retail,
Yeah.
part of the reason we don't have it is people don't necessarily go to it. When we did have it, it wasn't well used, and so it's turned over to other businesses. That'll get to our next topic when we turn to it, our survey that we're putting out to see what type of retail, what type of any use, but especially retail, we can show a developer that we have people ready to shop there, that we have people wanting this use that will actually use it, and hopefully help them to attract the type of businesses that we like. And not necessarily just in Islington, anywhere in town. So yeah, I think retail's great because it encourages walking. Restaurant is great, coffee shops, ice cream parlors. Those are the things that make a great community.
And
Unfortunately,
offices do provide more customers for the restaurants and.
They do. And so do residential units. Yeah, and the reason we have local business districts is because they're close to residential districts where people walk. So all the different uses work hand in hand and hopefully create a lively, active community. That's our goal.
Any other comments or questions from the group? Maybe I'll just open up to the public for a round. Yes.
I just wanted to mention, I hate to bring up the parking again, but I noticed there were tandem spaces when I was at last meeting, and I wanted to need them, and I used to have a tandem space like for 5 years, and Needham finally got rid of them because you would come to work, people would be parked on the end, and you couldn't get to the space in front of it. The spaces were so wasted all the time, so. And I paid money for that space, so, I mean, and these people, you know, they're gonna be free. People are just gonna park on the ends, and you're not gonna be able to get to the inside spaces. So all I was just gonna suggest was that you check with Needham and see what happened there, because they just finally said, we're getting rid of the spaces, and it was their idea. So, I just wanted to mention, I don't think they really do
So the
work.
planning board does have concerns about those tandem spaces, and we have discussed them in detail with our consultants and with the developers. And the only way those tandem spaces will work is if they're used for tenant-only spaces. So in all of the 12 units are residential units. Most of them will be single-car units. But if a unit wants to have 2 cars, they will need to lease that tandem space. If you have one of the 2 retail or office, hopefully retail storefronts, will have an opportunity for either a single space or a tandem space. If they need 2 spaces, they can have tandem. But in all cases, a single tenant would be responsible for the back-to-back spaces. They would never be available to 2 different tenants, so that they would have to self-manage it. And they would never be available to customers of any of the
Well, I mean, in Needham, I did pay money every year to have the space with somebody I knew. But I would come to work and people would be parked there that didn't, not the one in front of me. They would just be people that were going to stores or whatever, and you couldn't park in your space.
So that will not be allowed here. These spaces will be regulated and they will be restricted. You will need a card to get in there.
Well,
Only the tenants
yeah,
of the building and the residential tenants and the commercial tenants are the only ones that can get into the garage to use these spaces.
I'm just curious, where in Needham was that? Just out of-
Right in the, you know where CVS is?
Yep.
And that big
Behind
lot there?
Harvey's and.
They used to have buddy spaces, towards the back. And they sold them to all businesses in town, and our business owned 6 of them, and I mean, I paid a lot of money every year to have that space. And sometimes it worked, and a lot of times it didn't.
That's, the board has expressed concern on that, so they will only approve that if they have a way of managing the process.
Anybody else? Okay. Next item, the discussion of draft questions for online survey. I think Addie, you have some copies of that. Yeah.
So this also was discussed in our non-meeting on February 10th. So those that were here went over the draft survey, added some comments, and the version that's going around now is the version that reflects the comments that we received. So if you don't see comments that you recommended, or if you've thought of anything new since then, or if you weren't at that meeting and didn't have an opportunity to comment, please feel free to comment now. And there are about a dozen experts.
Does anybody want one?
Audience, anyone who'd like to see one. This survey, once it's finalized, will be put out on the town's website. I'm going to try and get it in our next newsletter to go out. We had talked about trying to put a link in this one, and we weren't able to do that in time. So hopefully it'll go out in the June newsletter. It'll also be on the website. I will see if maybe we can put copies in the library and community centers and council on aging. We want to attract as many people as we possibly can, so we get a good base for the survey. And the intention of the survey is to understand people's thoughts on Islington, but also their shopping habits, and their shopping preferences, so that we can see how we can use that information to attract the type of uses that we would like to see in Islington. So you can see the purple items are items that were added or revised Everything else was in the original survey. And I'll comment, the last page is still shown on here as part of the survey. I think it would be a follow-up survey. I think that would be separate. We discussed this a little bit on February 10th. While the last page has a lot of information that would be interesting to solicit, it may influence people's answers to the questions on the prior pages, so I wouldn't want to do that. I'd want to have the more open-ended responses to start with, and then a follow-up survey with the detailed requests on that. Anyone have any comments or questions, any items that I didn't address? Anything you've thought of since then?
My only comment was just like, the semantics with the mass transit use system, I think MBTA is actually everything,
Okay.
it's the bus, it's the train, it's the subway, all that kind of stuff.
If we go on the website, how are we gonna get this out?
Well, through the newsletter, through the website, I'll ask Westcat if they will put, you know, a flash in between programs. I'll ask the local newspaper to print the link as well. For those that are on the website, hopefully they'll pick it up. I'll ask the school department to put it in the district bulletin. If anyone can think of any other ways to get out, I'll put it in the library. You could send a postcard to all residents with the,
Little links,
okay?
sign up for the,
Council on Aging? Yes, at the library and the Council on Aging, I'd like to put hard copies as well, but yeah, great, we'll put out a postcard. And we're looking for to solicit survey responses, not just from Westwood residents, from people who work here or pass through or shop here. Yeah, or eat here, that's right.
and instructors, the little instructors, that's go to listserv
And sign up, yes. That's just so important. So they
Should we put kind of like enough time for people, let's say 2 weeks, maybe any kind of reasonable deadline so people can inform them postponing or cut it up?
Yes, so I know there's a, you have to find that right period of time, gives people enough time to do it, but not too much to put time off. So, right, so Helen, you've worked in surveys before, so I think we look to you for your advice on what that time frame might be.
Yeah, any longer than 2 weeks and it's not, it just.
People just put it off and never
Right.
get back
So
to
the
it.
key would be, in my mind, if we want to do it, we should do it before school ends. So people aren't away on vacation, and we shouldn't do it in the middle of like winter vacation or some other time like that. And so kind of pick that period. You don't want to wait till people, once school's out, then there's a lot of people that are just
Put it on.
kind of to the wind, so.
So our next newsletter goes out on June 15th.
Yeah.
So if we could get a postcard that maybe hits people's mailboxes, say around June 1st, and then a refresher in the newsletter on June 15th, maybe that's the best way to do it.
We haven't done it, you have something that's on meeting notes.
That's true. Yeah, we will absolutely have that done, right. Right. But again, that's a small, hopefully large, but
Well, it might be-
not a significant.
That's what you love me much, you don't know yet.
Even the largest town meeting we had did not capture the number of residents that I think we would love to capture with the survey.
Do you think it would be helpful to have something on the top that says what this is?
Sure,
Just
yeah,
says-
a description, right, this was just the start of questions, but yes. Yeah, an introductory discussion to why we're asking these questions.
On question 1, on the italics, that groceries, pharmacies, sporting goods, is it sporting goods or sporting events? How often do you visit Islington Center?
that was looking at shopping, so that was for purchasing sporting goods. So there's the subcategory shopping, then services, then dining,
Because there is
then
ski shop.
community.
Ski shop.
So I would say events would be down here, community, maybe I could add that, I have recreation, yoga, playground, organized sport, library, public services, I could say event, community events. I would say that would go on.
So maybe on the introduction, Laura, mention the purpose of the task force, particularly as it relates to the overall development of the corridor, not just the one particular area.
Yes.
And that these answers are going to help influence our discussions associated with
And does anyone in the audience have any thoughts or comments on what you've seen, those of you who have been?
Just Mike Gallagher, 25 Ash Street. Just a quick note. Since a lot of the initial discussion was about the sale, potential sale of property in town, could you add a question about what people might feel about town selling property in town, in Islington? And get feelings that way?
What's the thought on the task force? Is that something you'd like to solicit information on town on sale of town on properties? If that's something people favor or don't favor? I don't know that how much information you could put in the questions to inform people enough to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, just for future development. I mean, you know, something to the fact that, what are your feelings about the town selling off, you know, community center, library, parking lot properties for development? But, you know,
I was gonna say, when we first looked at this, we imagined the parts, some of the open-ended questions when we were at the non-meeting last time. We talked about how their open-endedness would allow people to put, for example, 14, which is now 15, what do you hope never changes about Islington Center? There would be an opportunity there for someone to say, you know, I hope that community buildings would stay town-owned. So I think we talked about those open-ended places as where people can kind of put their narrative feelings.
a lot of people might not realize that the town is looking to sell properties, or potentially sell properties.
Or I think the impression that people get when you hear the town is going to sell something like the Islington Community Center or like where MMO is or the library is that they're not actually looking to reinstate those someplace else. I think that's an important message to get out because I think that's what put people on high alert about this meeting tonight was that they thought the town just wants to make as much money in this area as they can. They're going to get rid of all of these things and just put in buildings with retail and apartments.
I think that message is very important to get out. I just question whether putting it in a survey gets the message out. Because a survey is asking for feedback, but if you don't give people the information they need to understand what's being considered to give the feedback, I'm not sure we'll get realistic feedback. So I
Right,
think
but
maybe
my
that
point
would-
is that I feel better having come here knowing at least that it's being discussed that there may still be a library branch down there and that there still might be some sort of recreation building for the community classes and things like that, where when I first heard about this meeting, the impression was that they're looking to sell those and get rid of them completely.
I just want to tell you, as a member of the task force who's been involved in a lot of these types of issues, as far as I'm concerned, that absolutely is just not why we're here. I mean, the reason we're here, in my opinion, is to me, the services that were provided are extremely important. And if there's a way through the swapping or a developer comes in that we can make them better and improve them, that's what I'm looking for. I mean, the other thing you gotta understand about the community center, it requires, it is in serious financial shape. It will cost a huge amount of money to bring it up to the standards we want. It really should be brought up to. So if we can go through this process, what I'd love to see, we go through a process where we're preserving the services we have in the community and we're enhancing them. So to me, the other example I'll give you, and it's maybe my own bias, you know, when and it was a bit of a heated discussion town meeting, but when the chance came up to buy property near the schools, I mean, and the church wanted to sell, to me that was this town needs to treasure any property it can get its hands on for future needs. So to me, the way I view this, we're not selling, we're looking to find a way to enhance and improve and we're using our chits in the game as a leverage.
Right,
If-
I think that's important
Yeah,
as a
and-
out
and
there,
so
I think the survey helps,
yeah.
that we can write, like, how many times we go to the library, how many
Yeah.
times, how many classes we're signed up for in these buildings and.
I think the purpose of this, I mean, to me, if you ask a question like that, it's almost, oh my gosh, no, I don't want to sell anything. We're sort of missing the point of what we're trying to get done here. And to me, the issue is, this is not the intent. We're not in the business of selling land to get money. I mean, that's not the way, Westwood operates. I think to me, I'm doing this. If we can come up with a way of using our parcels in combination with what a developer may come to the table with, at the end of the day, the residents say, wow, we got, the library's great, we got a much better community center, we got this, we got that. That's what we're looking for here.
How about this idea, that postcard that we send out, will
Right.
have a link to the survey, we'll also have the information to get to the town's website, and we'll find a way to get on the town's website all the information we can about the RFP, about the
Right.
plans for the future, about the
That's the
task
way
force
that's
meetings, and let people come and get it. I think that's better than adding it to the survey.
Nora, a couple quick questions about the survey. Question number 7, if someone responds to where do you work at home, does that inform us at all about anything? Because they could be living in Islington or in Westwood outside of Islington Center or outside of Westwood entirely. Does that home give you information that's useful?
I think what that was looking at is the stay-at-home parent, more than anything else. That they, or it could be someone who works out of their office, but it gives you an idea that we have, further up on the survey, we will know where they live, whether they're
Gotcha.
in Westwood or
Okay.
outside of Westwood.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
those two questions together
Yeah.
give you, and their age, it all gives you an idea of their patterns and what time of day they'd be most likely to
That
be.
makes sense, yeah. I didn't consider the earlier question as to where they live, so that makes sense. And then a really minor point on question number 9, Uber and Lyft, let this start with a Y. For
Thank
whatever-
you.
Whatever it's worth.
Spell check. It does end
The
sometimes.
brand police.
Yeah.
Let's not get catch that, right?
Yeah, right.
I also have a very minor point, but
Yes.
in question 8, for the ages, if you're 55, you could either be in 2 categories.
All right,
I would
all right.
prefer to be the 36.
Well, you have your choice.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So how do you like that?
How do you feel today?
It's a good news.
All right, so I know Trevor wants to get onto the small group activities, so if you see anything else on this, or you have any comments, please just send me an email. Happy to put in anything we need to put in, make it the best we can.
Okay. So I do have a small group activity for us tonight. I'm also looking at the clock. We've been talking a lot longer about it. Is everyone up for another 40 minutes or so of
I'm gonna.
fun?
Or we can do it next
I
time.
would be good. You want, you want to time to spend with this, if you want to conduct it, I'm guessing I would first.
That's kind of my reaction.
Okay, then.
A lot of people have been out late a lot already this
We're
week,
sorry,
so.
back with them.
Then the question that comes next is when to meet again, and I would like, oh, sure, go ahead.
I'm going to say a few words about what I was planning on, so we're all ready and eager next time. Right? So what I've come up with is kind of an opportunity for us to break off into smaller groups and discuss a couple different topics. And the idea is it's kind of a brainstorm opportunity. Everyone kind of put their ideas out in maybe a slightly smaller setting to encourage a little more fluidity. Some of our prior meetings, there's been a lot of silence around the table. Tonight was an exception to that, which was awesome. So the idea was that we would take about 15 minutes for these groups to break off, and then depending on how many people show up, how many groups there are, but and to basically have a smaller discussion about some different ideas about town, and then to come back together and just kind of present very briefly to the group, like what did you talk about, what did you come up with, what are the ideas you have, and the generators we have that are a map of town, a map of the area, and some post-it notes to basically stick ideas up about anything. For instance, one of the topics is a hot one, parking, traffic, and transportation, but the discussion could be like, I'd love to see a parking lot here, or I think the train station should move, or just really anything. I mean, I think the intention, I think, when I thought of this was to try to influence how we think about the RFP, but a lot of the things we talked about tonight dealt with the master plan, and I think that's probably the more important, could be an important tool to feed that discussion and get us all thinking about that. So by way of homework, think about that.
Would it help to have a sense of what your breakup group is going to be, so you can think more deeply about whatever?
Well, I have it right on the agendas, so, but the idea, I was gonna actually have everyone draw straws and just let it be random, so it's kind of like.
But I think, we didn't get copies of the agenda.
Okay, the agenda was posted, so that the different groups are listed on the agenda.
So just research all of those.
You don't want to draw this board now and then come back.
Well, actually, why don't we do that? We have a fairly good class, we can draw the straws now. And then you'll know next time what you're facing. So I think we have.
That'll help you decide whether to come next.
I'll have that. We'll do it second time.
Yeah, why don't we start with the date for our next meeting? Wednesday seems to be a good night for everyone, and there seems to be some availability in the meeting space then. So I was thinking April 7th, that would allow us to meet prior to the Washington, Thursday 6th, April 6th. That would allow us to meet prior to the next planning board meeting that discusses the Washington project. Hopefully we would have more information to share with you that we've received from the consultant by then, and we could tackle the small group. So if that works for everyone, I still have to double check the location. I'd like to get back to the Islington Community Center. We might have to be upstairs in the sanctuary as opposed to downstairs in the hall, but it's big enough, I think we could meet there.
So it would be 7 o'clock on the.
7 o'clock on April 6th. And this would be our backup. I'm not sure that the library is even available then, so I'd have to check, but I would like to get back to Islington if we can.
And the sanctuary will work well for breaking
Into groups, yes.
April 6th, what time,
7 p.m. And we will again try to be done by 9. So if you're not going to be able to make it, then don't drive strong.
Just draw one, unless you want to do two.
Sit down.
I'm not next time.
No, it's.
Now we go to the next night. The next night.
Not getting involved in church.
Yeah.